know I'm only speaking the truth, man. The streets ain't empty, they full of GIs and the jealous ones envy. Making TIs also no look flimsy. Can it be that we live all so simply? Real gone, no head, need a fake. Got Ray John Rondo to flow, lead the break, sell ticks to the show. Blow hand, feed them great, then give me back pounds. Y'all don't need to wait, nah. Y'all hungry, but not like Haiti. Heard some great clips, but y'all can't fade me. Check it out, yo. Wait, I may pay for all the things that I may say, but I gotta say them whether or not you wanna play them. I continue to relay them all day, every day.
Yo, what up, everybody? Welcome to episode 2 of the Dad is Dope podcast. That track you just heard was Active Food from JustMe featuring Kaz Meta, my personal favorite from the album Hajime. You can hear that and more from Just at soundcloud.com/JustMeOfficial or purchase the album at Bandcamp, link in the bio. With that being said, let's get into episode 2 of Dad is Dope.
A Cuban cigar, know a star that appear to be zooming. Hajime like JLL cooling when cars drive by with the system booming.
Ooh, I'ma have to act a fool on some live smooth, got nothing to prove. I just wanna rock, cause none of y'all hip hop, and it's about time some guy fill these shoes. Ooh, I'ma have to act a fool and activate a coup.
Yo, welcome to episode 2 of Dad is Dope. Thank you for tuning into my podcast where my main goal is to shine a light on fatherhood in a way that isn't being done anywhere else. Today's episode features the one and only Justin Long, aka JustMe, MC, DJ, husband, and father, founding member of the legendary Scribbling Idiots, and all-around dope human being. What up, Just? How you doing, brother?
I'm doing well. Keeping busy between working and a little bit of music here and there, and being a dad.
Being a dad, see, what you can't see off screen is the kids kicking it on my couch playing Madden in my room right now. So it's cool, man. That's what Marcus said when I first spoke to him. He said he was going to have the kids through. It's a fatherhood podcast. So, yeah, you know it's not a problem, man.
Makes sense.
I'm happy to have you, man. I kind of gave you an intro, a little small spill in the beginning, man. I'm going to give you an opportunity to kind of introduce yourself for those that may not know you, man. If you want to kind of tell them who you are and what you're about. Whenever you're ready, brother.
Cool. Well, I'm Justin Long, aka JustMe. I was born and raised in Southern California. I've lived in Kentucky for about 16 years. I'm an MC, producer, DJ, and a dad and a husband. And I coach middle school football presently and have coached basketball and football in the past.
Right, no soccer, right?
No football Americano.
Yeah. It's so funny, man. My dad started doing soccer because he takes in foster kids.
Right.
And he started coaching soccer, and the man didn't know anything about soccer, but it's something about soccer and coaching it that you can hop in whether you know what's happening or not. You know what I mean? Like,
word. The thing is that there's more of a demand for coaches than there is like people who know the sport that are willing to be involved, I think. Yeah. So it was kind of the same thing for me with football. I didn't play organized football growing up. So I played, with the neighborhood kids and stuff like that. Right. But I knew a lot about football just from my father played in high school and just was a fan my whole life. Yeah. So when Jake started being interested in football, in fact, his first flag football year, the coaches kind of dropped the ball, and so a couple dads, including myself, stepped in, and then I just stayed involved. And so you learn more and more. And so, I'm coaching with guys on the coaching staff that are, guys who played college football. Right. You know what I mean? So,
right there with them.
Yeah.
So, man, let's start this conversation off on the tip of music, if that's cool with you. You said you're an MC. Of course, I know that already. Latest album is Hajime. I want to know, man, when did you realize that you wanted to be a rapper? Like, when did you decide I want to be an MC, you know?
Wow. That's a good question. So, I have to take it back further. So I started dancing first. That was kind of the first thing. When I was in like 6th grade, I got into dancing, and actually even before that, like just, you know, out on the back porch with the homies or at the park with the homies, you know, just with cardboard out.
Different song.
Yeah. So, and then, you know, started like getting real serious about it in like 6th grade. And then, and I started DJing around the same time. Okay. And, it was just sort of a natural progression. Like I also did, graffiti and stuff too. Was lousy at it. Wasn't the greatest, DJ. And, so MCing was just a part of it. You just give it a try. And I found that I was pretty good at writing, so I just stuck with it, and then didn't get like real serious with it until my sophomore year of high school. My freshman year, we would like record at the house because I was DJ. I had all the equipment to where we would just, you know, drop an instrumental, and you know, I didn't even have any recording equipment, so it was like we were just running everything to a tape deck. So we'd play an instrumental, and everyone would rap and hand the mic around. If somebody messed up a lyric on the last line,
ran the whole thing back.
Everyone's recording over. Yeah, and so we would record little tapes like that. And then my sophomore year, I actually moved from Orange County down to San Diego, and that's when I met Sojourn from a crew called Future Shock, and a bigger crew called Tunnel Rats. And I started hanging out with those guys and like going to the studio. Right. That was my first exposure to that. And that's when I was like, I hooked. Like, I know, like, this is what I want to do.
Yeah, Cali at that time had a ton of underground groups and squads that were just nasty. People that are still involved in it today that were active back then. It's crazy the longevity of some of those people. You're talking about your origin and that they're still around kicking it, doing music, touring and whatnot. It's nuts.
Yeah.
But I mean, when you're passionate about something, you're passionate about something. It's cool to see. I know a lot of people that I first started out with doing music and whatnot aren't doing it anymore. It's a different era now, and people are still, you know, kicking it, doing music, and they started it back then, and it's crazy to see them still going strong, man.
It's interesting because, you know, the guys that have been doing it a long time, we talk about, like, when we started, there was an investment that needed to happen for you to get anything accomplished in the game. So you had to like spend money on either buying your own equipment or going to the studio and paying, you know, whatever, like upwards of, you could be paying $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And so because of that investment, that weeded a lot of, you know, casual artists out.
Yeah, out quickly.
And then with the birth of online stuff and the fact that you could just, if you had a PC, you could record everything at your house.
Right.
That like had this huge influx of tons of people wanting to rap. And you could look at that as a good thing. Like, hey, we can do this on our own now. But you also had like everybody and their mom had a project out.
Yep.
Know? So you didn't have the weeding out process.
Became an oversaturation almost, man.
Yeah. And now it's getting to the point where it's still available to everyone, but I think we've kind of gotten past the point of like everyone wanting to try.
Right.
So it's back to there's a little bit more integrity in it, you know,
yeah,
like
man.
Where people are like, the investment now is time,
right,
and energy.
So you're talking about crews, man. You're a part of a crew yourself. Yep. When did SI come about? When did the Scribbling Idiots start out?
So I moved to Kentucky in 2001.
Okay.
And I went to, and the first person that I met that was part of the hip hop scene here in Lexington was Deacon the Villain.
Right. Of Cunning Linguist, for those that don't know.
Right. So we went, I actually went to Sammy's, currently the album, but back then it was just called Sammy's.
Right.
And went to the store and was checking some stuff out and just mentioned to them like that I rhymed, and they were like, oh, you know, you need to meet Deacon. So they called Deacon up and he come down to the store and we connected, and so I ended up going to Scribble Jam with he and No and actually some guys from Frankfurt rolled up there with us, and
okay.
And happened to meet up with Listener and actually Dust and Manchild from Marzil were there as well, but they had to leave to go do another show or something. So connected with Listener, who I'd known for a long time, and just kind of, we weren't like close or anything, we weren't from the same area, but just the fact that we were both Christian men that were making hip hop music, we kind of knew
there's
each
a connection
other
there.
Yeah. So sure. We hung out and we were hanging out at the booth, and this scrawny blonde kid from Ohio comes walking up and he starts talking to Listener, and then Listener's like, well, this is Sage from Soul Seekers. So because when I was in California, I was in a different group and went by a different name, and he was like, oh yeah, you know, I know who you are, and he started rapping my lyrics to me. Yeah. And I was like, this is crazy.
Small world. Yeah.
Man. So we just connected and started building, and I told him like, well, maybe we can help each other, because I had a studio at the crib so I could record him. Right. But he had like connections around locally where he could hook up shows and stuff like that. So when he came down to start recording stuff, he was like, well, we should just record stuff together. And so we started doing that, and then we just started, actually it was more him and the connections that he had, and we're making that we started bringing in different people, and that's kind of how the crew was
cool
formed.
Just naturally. So SI has done a lot of touring and stuff, man, and you guys have, is it like 3 albums or 4 albums? I mean, I know you've got a couple that are like, you and Kaz have got one and whatnot, but like joint albums that you guys have together, how many albums does SI have?
So actual like crew albums, we have 3.
Yeah,
officially. So we have the first one, which was called The Have Nots. Right. The second album, which was Invitation Only, which was just like a collab album. So there's people from Scribbling Idiots on every song, but there's also people from all over the place on every song as well. And then the third album, the most recent one, was Good Morning Morning.
Yep. Which is the shirt you're rocking.
Which is the shirt I'm wearing right now.
Yeah, I love the single from that track or that album, and I think didn't Corey Dupree do one of the videos for you guys?
He did. Yeah.
I think he did. Yeah, awesome video. Me and Corey are friends now, and we rock together sometimes, man. But I think that was the first time I ever like actually kind of got to know his work was the video he did for that album. So.
Yeah, Corey's good people.
Yeah, he's a good guy, man. Good guy. He's in South Africa right now, man. Visiting his girl is crazy, man. He flew out a couple of days ago. But yeah, with that being said, man, I know you got 3 albums with the SI, but if you had to choose one album that kind of summed you up as an artist, if you were introducing someone to your music, what album would you give them, man? And why would that album be the pick?
So actually, I know the answer to this question mostly because usually when I give somebody one of my records for the first time, I can cheat kind of. I give them 2 albums. Yeah. In one, because I actually did this and sold the albums together, which was Tragedy and Dope. Right. Which was completely produced by Deacon the Villain. Yep. And he's all over the record singing on it. And then the other one is Full Disclosure, which is completely produced by Sebastian. Right. Which at the time went by Jack.
Yeah. So those are my favorite albums from you too, man. Like kind of the combo, because that was the first product I ever got from you. When you came through, it was Bethel, I believe. You performed there with, I believe, who else was there? It was Kaz, and Mouth, and Ocean, yeah, Motion Plus. Yep. So it was a dope night, and I remember getting your project and having that dual disc stamped or whatever. Yep. Dope product, just holding it in your hand. But how political, some of the songs were, it was just blew me away, man. And then from there, I kind of began digging and whatnot, and didn't realize like that you had all the solo stuff. Like I had listened to a little bit of SI, as a group, but I had never really dug into any of your products. So it was really cool to get that album, man. And I've put a lot of people on to that particular product, you know what I mean? So, and a lot of people, they hear Hajime in town, but I don't know if a lot of people here in Lexington or in Kentucky in general have heard that project. And I feel like, man, that, it's classic. Thanks, I love that.
Thanks.
But outside of your favorite album of yourself, what's your favorite album overall in music? Shoot. And that's a big question, man.
Yeah,
it extends genres and whatnot. Yeah, it's tough.
It's possible.
Let's go with hip hop. What's your favorite album in hip hop?
So, favorite hip hop album of all time, really the one that I return to the most. I even am gonna like qualify this and say that there's two.
Okay, that's cool.
The two that I return to the most are Common's Resurrection.
Yeah, great album.
And Nas Illmatic.
Yeah.
So
Illmatic is the easy answer, I feel like, because a lot of people like started out with that album, digesting it, and like it was huge. Not only was it huge, but it was like it was revolutionary. Like it sounded like nothing else kind of at the time, and the DJ Premier production on it and whatnot, like it was groundbreaking. And a lot of people doubted Nas at that time, like didn't think he was really going to be able to do much. And I've looked at blogs and stuff when that album came out, like because the internet was really, really early then, and like what people were saying about the album when it came out back then. And a lot of people were like, yo, he sold out. And now it's like notoriously one of the greatest albums of all time, if not the best hip hop album of all time.
It was the first time you had like an all-star cast of producers.
Right.
So you had really well established Primo, Pete Rock, Large Professor, all producing on the same album.
And there's a reason that they all wanted to work with him, even that early. I mean,
he had made a couple, guest appearances, Live at the Barbecue.
Yep.
And he just in those couple verses that he had done, Back to the Grill Again.
Yeah, that was going to be my mention. That was one of the first verses I ever heard from him and blew my mind away. The video alone, like him just coming in just so heavy and hard, man. Like I love that track.
Yeah, so like those two verses had like set the world ablaze. And there was kind of like, there was a lot of shock value to the things he was saying in those verses. So I think people were like, oh, is all his stuff gonna be like just where he drops all this stuff? And then when he drops like a really intelligent album, and you think about the age he was when he was writing these
17
songs,
a lot of that, 16, because I think how old was he when he dropped it? He was like 18 or 19 when he dropped, right? And he had been working on a lot of those songs for like 2 years. They were popping up on demos before. So this kid was like 16, 17 years old, writing some of the most introspective rhymes that have held up still to today.
He
know what I mean?
He can still go out and perform that album. And everyone,
and it matches with a grown man. Yeah, like a grown man can still say those things. And there's not a lot of that. Nowadays, you listen to 16-year-olds, like, they're not going to be able to be rapping the same thing they're doing now 20, 30 years down the road. No way.
No.
It's crazy. It was a different time, man. So.
It was. And then Resurrection for me was just the really jazzy production that No ID was doing on that record.
Yeah.
And then, and just Common, like, sort of, growing up and like really pouring himself into the record and like revealing a lot about himself. Not just like all braggadocio, although there's plenty of that mixed in there.
Yes, for sure.
But, a lot of like, heartfelt,
You mentioned No ID. Have you listened to the new Jay album?
Of course.
Yeah. What do you think about the production on that?
I like it. And the funny thing to me is that I started working on a project a couple years ago with Theory Has It that's never seen the light of day. and it's really like stripped down,
Yeah.
like chops and stuff like that, and that's what this record
That's
is. And I'm
exactly
like,
what he did.
Man, this guy, it cracks me up because, we were doing that
Right.
a couple years ago and just didn't drop it, and but of course Jay does it. It's like,
Yeah, everyone's paying attention.
Yeah.
Like I read today, even the non-exclusive numbers, like he sold 122K outside of the exclusive, and like this is like second or third week that it's been out, so like it's still doing numbers, you know what I mean? And with it not being on a lot of the streaming platforms, a lot of times now that's where all the numbers are coming from. Like you get that first week numbers and it's like 20,000 pure sales and then like 150 or streams, you know what I mean? And like the era is totally different now, but to see somebody like Jay still kind of doing his thing like that, like everyone's gonna always pay attention. And reading the articles talking about this new genre of like dad rap or whatever, and I'm like, yo, it's real, because our heroes and our legends are growing old now. With Prodigy dying, and Prodigy's kind of a different story because he's had sickle cell, he's lived with it his whole life, but at the same time, like him passing away, man, like these young cats that we can look at videos from like 15, 20 years ago, and they're young, and now they're beginning to, grow old. And where that leaves hip hop, man, like, it's yet to be determined fully. And it's cool to kind of watch it come to fruition, you know what I mean, with people like Jay. We
talked about Shiesty Christ, my best friend. We were recently talking about 444, and he hadn't heard it yet. He had only heard like the single, and he asked me, so what do you think of it? And I said, not even trying to, like, I don't think this was his intention or anything like this, but just me being like a huge Common fan. Yeah. I'm like, this dude made his Common out.
Oh, for sure.
Like, it's grown man rap.
Yeah, man.
And it's all produced by No ID.
Right.
I'm like, it's too much to say it's coincidence,
No, I love it, man. Honestly, where I'm at now with music, like a lot of the stuff that is appealing to my ear is so outside of what's actually coming out on the radio and what's even showing up on my Spotify feed and whatnot. Like, I just find myself more and more distancing myself kind of from what's popular, because it's really just gotten to a point now where, like, I can't play that in the car with my kid, you know what I mean? Like, there's no way I can play some of this stuff, you know what I mean? And at least, like, when I'm listening to Phife Dawg, like, yeah, he's got some vulgar lines, you know what I mean? But at the same time, he's so funky. There was so much style and art to it, man. It's different. It's just different, you know what I mean? And, like, listening to Jay just kind of wax poetic and kind of come clean about a lot of things and just being like totally transparent is relieving, you know what I mean? Because like Jay, at his stature, man, he can do whatever he wants to do, you know what I mean? He could have dropped an album just talking about cars and jewelry, you know what I mean? And nobody would have blinked an eye at it, you know what I mean? But instead he put out something that could very possibly impact the culture moving forward, especially for people of his age and of that era, to see maybe they'll move forward kind of in a different lane, you know what I mean?
I certainly hope so.
Me too, man. Me too. But with that being said, man, let's go back to kind of back in the day for you. When was the last time you toured?
Man, it's been a long time for me. I've done actually a couple dates when like Kazmeta from Scribbling Idiots and a couple of the other guys from the crew, when they've gone on tour. Yeah. Like I'll do a couple like closer dates with them. We'll do a Lexington show. We'll do Cincinnati and maybe somewhere else close by, and that's kind of what I jump on. Yeah. But it's been a long time since I've done any like real traveling. Right.
Now, I know we've talked a little bit about you, kind of your trips to Australia, and I know you took Jake to Japan. That's been a little while ago. It's been about 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. Yeah,
Japan was, I want to say it was 4 years ago. 5. He's holding up 5.
Yeah.
Years, so 5.
Yeah, I saw the pictures on Facebook yesterday. I was kind of looking at some photos to kind of promote the episode going forward or whatever. And I was looking at the pictures. I'm like, Jake doesn't look like this anymore. Nah. Like, Jake's gotten a little taller since then. You know what I mean? But Let me ask you, man, like kind of what one of the coolest stories from on the road when you were going around, like in travels in general. It doesn't have to be like music tour or whatever, but like just traveling to Australia and kind of hanging out with the crews down there and whatnot. What's one of the coolest stories that you kind of look back on and smile a little bit?
Man, I just think that I first off, I love traveling, especially outside the country.
Yeah,
because it gives you perspective on you know, how the world has, you know, different, you know, views about things that depending on where you go, and but people are people no matter where you go, and people have the same hopes and desires and things like that. And man, Australia, you know, big up to Crosswords in Australia. Those are my people, you know, like just all these great guys and gals that are committed to, you know, sharing love through hip hop and making a difference. And so my trips out there have been awesome because, you know, you get there and it's just like family. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like in everything we do, it just feels like, even if it's been a year since we've seen each other or years,
pick right off where you left
off. Like right up. Yeah. And, so I love that. Japan was so much fun because I got to take Jake with me. Yeah. Which he's traveled with me. We've been to Singapore together before that. Dope. And my parents had lived there for a few years. But Japan was cool just because I've always had this infatuation with Japanese culture and all that. And so going out there and just trying to soak it all in. And that's cool too, because the cool thing about that is you go somewhere where you truly are an outsider. Totally. You know what I mean? And and you stick out like a sore thumb. Like, and that is cool. Like, to have that flipped on you. Yeah, totally, man. And to do that.
Talk about perspective. Yeah, that'll do it really quickly.
And I just, you know, appreciate all the history and the differences between the cultures.
We had some family that just moved to Japan, and they were talking about kind of like when they would walk on the street and whatnot, how quiet it is. Like people aren't talking with one another and stuff. Like here, like it's loud. Like on the street, everyone's on the phone. You know what I mean? Like everyone's kind of talking and whatnot. And like there, it's just almost just quiet, like eerily quiet or whatever.
Even though it's like way more crowded.
Yeah, like a lot more people, and yet they're not talking. You know, it's crazy. It is. Like to even think about that, it almost sounds like the Twilight Zone or something. You know what I mean? Like I was trying to wrap my head around it when they were talking about that, and I'm like, you know, are people really that different? You know, where we're at and kind of where we're raised and the things that we're taught coming up and what's polite and what isn't or whatever. And it's just so wild how it just, there's a huge spectrum depending on kind of where you're at in the world, that some things that are totally okay to do in America and that we don't frown upon elsewhere is just like unforgivable, man. Like, don't do that. Yeah. Like I'm reading this book about a guy. He's an ex-punk rock star, and he's into Zen. Like he's a Zen master, if you want to call it that. Right. And he makes fun of that the whole time, but that's kind of what they refer to him as. And he was talking about, he was on a Zen trip in Japan. And he brought some guys with him, and like the guy told him when they moved in, like, make yourself at home or whatever, you know, because they're there for a week just doing, you know, meditation and whatnot. And he said that the guys that he brought with him raided the fridge. Like they drank all the soda. And the dude flipped out. Like when they got back to America, the guy was calling him, telling him, you can never come back. You know what I mean? And like he asked him, like, what's wrong, man? Like, what did we do? Because they cleaned the whole place. He's like, you drank all my soda, man. And like he was that livid about it. You know what I mean? And like I think about here, man, like a dude drinks my soda. Yeah, you know, yeah, I may get a little upset, but at the same time, like, yo, it's soda, you know. But over there, it's the point of it. You know what I mean? Like that didn't belong to you.
Yeah, it's the principle of it.
Yeah. And it's cool, man, to see how different it is. And I think America has a lot to learn from other countries. If we were willing to listen, we could learn a lot from other cultures. But so many times we get just stuck in our ways, man. Like, this is the way. This is how we want it to be. any other way. Any difference is just not right. You know what I mean? So I like traveling too, because it helps us kind of appreciate what it is that we have, number one. And number two, it helps us realize kind of that we don't need everything that we've got. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. But let's get off of music, man, a little bit, and let's go into movies, because I know that's another passion of yours, man. And I'm obviously really passionate about movies too, man. And I kind of want to talk about that with you, because I know in the past, like when we drove to watch the Play-Doh, he's Crumb now, but when we went to watch his show, like all we talked about was movies there and back.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Terrell was bored out of his mind, because he's not a movie guy. But I totally am, and I know you are too. So I'd like to chop it up with you about that for a little bit, if that's cool with you.
Yeah,
man.
absolutely.
So you've talked to me about script writing a little bit in the past. Is that something that you're still interested in doing, or?
Definitely. Unfortunately, it's just such a thing you have to really commit time to doing, and that I haven't. There's been times where I've started something and then just sort of let it fade away, and it's something you have to really commit to. And with all that I've been involved in recently, I just haven't had time to really dive into it. But I'm always studying. You know what I mean? Always reading books about it, and just watching movies. Yeah,
that's the thing about it. I was listening to John Singleton on a podcast the other day, and he asked him, like, what advice would you give to somebody that's kind of wanting to write films or direct films? And his number one advice was, like, study the art. Like, go as far back as when there was films and watch them all. Yeah. You know what I mean? And, like, that's encouraging to me, because I'm in the same spot right now, man. Like, I work a full-time job. I got a wife that needs my attention. I got a baby about to come, so it's going to be even more hectic. But I have this, like, burning desire to kind of, like, make films. You know what I mean? One day. I know that it'll happen one day. But right now, man, it's like I'm just studying. Like, I'm watching everything and, like, catching all the kind of little nuances in film that a lot of people don't even notice or whatever.
Man, well, and like you said, go back and watch film from when it first started. Like, if you have never watched Charlie Chaplin's films, then
what can you say?
Yeah, like, this dude was writing full-length films with no audio. You know what I mean? Like,
big difference, man.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference. And if you could do that, that's one thing I feel kind of happy about, is that I made a music video for one of my records. Ceremonial Master is the name of the song, and it, for all intents and purposes, if you muted the song playing in the background, it's a silent film.
Yeah.
And that was kind of just all done on the fly. Like, there was no script. We, like, my man Landon showed up, and he did all the shooting and all the editing, but it was mostly just me going, all right, let's go here, and we're gonna do this, and then we're gonna, and we shot it sequentially. Like, we didn't shoot it, like this part here, and then we're gonna go back to the beginning, and no, we shot it like in the order that the film went. So it was fun to do that, and I think that if you're gonna jump into anything, this goes the same thing for music, especially MC, and we get. The old guys, we sound all bitter or whatever, but we're like, study the craft, man.
Yeah, man.
Like, don't just listen to other guys that are coming out right now.
Yeah.
Go back and listen, because then if you don't understand your history, then how are you going to move it forward?
Yeah, very true.
Otherwise, you're just copycat.
Yeah, you're supposed to be building on kind of what the people before you did, and making it better, progressing it. And it's almost now like it's regressing. Like, it's going to a point that it's like, all based on just sonics, you know what I mean? Like, however it sounds sonically is what's selling, as long as, like, the words kind of match up with the percussion, you know what I mean? And it's almost like it's ancient almost, you know what I mean? Because like the beginning of music is all just drums, rhythm, you know what I mean? Yeah. It's all rhythm, and like now it's just digressed to this point where it's not poetry anymore. It's just like literally just putting things down that match up with the rhythm perfectly, you know? And as long as it does that, it's selling right now. And you can listen to like all the music that's coming out that's labeled hip hop at this point, for the most part, that's what it's doing.
Yeah.
And And really the producers are what's driving the craft right now.
Absolutely.
They're making these beats that, I mean, they sound great. Like, the thing about it is, like, some of it you listen to and it's just like, okay, I can get with this.
Yeah.
And then when the person hops on the track, it's just like, okay, fair
what
enough.
is this?
Yeah, the beat's selling, you know, but like, with or without you, this track was hot. You know what I mean?
Found myself appreciating, you know, all these guys. So, like, sitting over here is my son and two of his best friends, and you know, we're in the car, and a lot of times he like hijacks the stereo, you know,
right?
Give me the aux cord,
yeah,
and plugs in his phone, and we're listening, and I'm like, I can appreciate when the beat comes on, or even some of the, you know, like you said, some of the rhythmic, you know, utterances that they're making, or you're kind of like, okay, that's catchy, you know what I mean? Like, I can get with that. And you find yourself nodding your head, even if you're just like, this is totally ignorant.
Yeah.
You know, like...
It's gone back to, again, the basics, man. Like, I've listened to Future talk about it in interviews and whatnot. And look at this, we've done full circle. We're back in music. But Future talking about it and saying, like, he bases most of it off of, like, nursery rhymes. Like, the hooks that he does, like, he's actually shown, like, during the interview, he was doing a nursery rhyme. And then he turned around right after he did the nursery rhyme, he did the hook to his song. And they're lining right up. And it's all the rhythm of it is pretty much all it is. And then fill in the blanks. You know what I mean? Just write whatever. And that's why one line doesn't match up with the next line, doesn't match up with the next. And kind of like the music I fell in love with was this whole stream of consciousness where the 16 bars all went together. And like the first 2 bars, you could have removed the rest of it and matched them up with the last 2 bars, and you could kind of still get an idea of what this individual was talking about. Yeah. And now, like, I think, like, the first time I realized it was happening was when Wayne was really popping, and it was like one line, and then the next line was totally different, and it was just these broad statements, like just one sentence, then one sentence, and one sentence. And now it's all like that. It's nuts, you know. But I think like we were talking about, Jay, I think it's going to have a resurgence, man. The art is definitely happening, and there's blogs and whatnot that are still out there really pushing that. Like Team Backpack, I don't know if you're familiar with them. Yeah. Like some of the ciphers they have and some of the artists that they push and whatnot, man. Like, I think certain outlets like that will always kind of help drive the culture in the direction it should go. Yeah. Because I think there's a lane for both of them, man. Like,
well, and it ties back to film.
Yeah.
So, you know, what we see now is just remake after remake after remake.
And CGI filled, man. Like these Michael Bay films, like, I can't believe they're still doing Transformers, bro. Right? Like the last Transformers, not the newest one, but the last one, like, we walked out of that movie. You know what I mean? Like, it was that bad for me. And this new one, I have no interest in going and seeing that. But then I look at the numbers and I'm like, overseas, that last Transformers movie is the highest grossing film of all time.
It's crazy.
And I'm like, that blows my mind. You know what I mean? And like, to a degree, I can get it because, like, it's just robots, you know, smashing each other. So there's no language barrier there. Right. You know what I mean? But then at the same time, I'm like, God, dude, we got to appreciate, you know, real film a little bit more. Like, we were talking about last year, I think it was, our favorite film was Birdman with Michael Keaton. Have you seen
Birdman's
that?
dope.
I mean, phenomenal film. And there's no CGI. It's all just kind of dramatized in these long shots. You know what I mean? Like 20-minute shots where they have no cuts. And, you know, it's just one big stream of film, you know?
Yeah.
And like you were talking about how when you first started off kicking it, like, when everybody would have to pass the mic and drop a verse, if you messed up one time, you had to run it back. And that's what's so impressive to me about a film like that, man, is like when they're running film for 15 minutes and they have to hit every timing, you know, perfectly, everything has to happen or else you run that whole thing back. I mean, it's impressive. But a lot of people can't look at that and say, like, yeah, I can appreciate that, because a lot of people just want robots blowing each other up. You know what I mean? Like, they just want to have fun.
Yeah, but it goes to show that there are people still pushing the envelope.
Definitely.
What was the film? Was it Boy? The one that...
Yeah, where he grows up throughout the whole movie.
It over...
Yeah, man, like
whatever,
15 years or something like that.
Like,
nuts.
That's commitment to
yes,
excellence.
For sure. For sure.
So, you know, there's definitely stuff out there. So with these guys, movies is a huge thing for my family, and you know, and these kids are all into it too. you know, I think that's something that everyone can relate to.
For sure,
you
man.
know, even if you like music, you know, everyone likes some sort of genre of music, just about, and everyone likes some form of film.
Right.
We watch the two that we connect on the most are scary movies.
Yeah.
We love horror films.
Oh yeah.
And then sports movies.
Yeah.
So,
well,
superhero
sports movies will make you cry, man.
Yeah.
Like straight up. You know, there's not a lot of films that like touch me to the point that I'm like kind of getting chills and whatnot. And I'm not even a huge sports guy.
Right.
But there's nothing like, you know, them winning at the end of the game after it's been extended for 15 minutes and they've came back against all odds, man. Like we love human triumph. You know, even watching it when it's like fictionalized, you know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing.
It is.
So what film, you talking about you know, film's a big thing for your family. What film made you originally kind of fall in love with movies? Is there one that kind of stands out to you that was just like mind blowing? Like Marcus and I were talking about Star Wars and Star Trek, and the first time he went and saw Star Wars, like the Imperial Guard marching in and whatnot, like. So
the first Star Wars film that I saw in theaters that I even could see in theaters was Return of the Jedi. And my grandfather took me to see Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And so that was probably, you know, the first one that was like a big deal. And of course, then you know, I saw the other two on VHS. Real young. My pops bought a VHS player when he was overseas.
Okay.
In the military, and brought it back. In fact, it was in a Kai.
Oh wow!
You know, like so people, so I get a trip if I see anything Akai. I'm like, that's dope. You know, for all the producers out there that have an MPC.
Shout out Taj Ricketts.
You're right.
Obvious. That's what he still works with exclusively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so you have, you know, this piece of equipment that, and I actually have a cassette deck at home that's in Akai as well. So yeah, I love that. But not to get off on another tangent.
Oh, you're good, man.
But yeah, the Star Wars films obviously were huge, and I love martial arts films.
Yeah.
So and of course, you know, what probably kicked that off was like Karate Kid. But, then you see like, oh, they got a lot of this from like you know, the 36th Chamber of Shaolin and stuff like that. So.
It's cool too because martial arts movies tie into some of that East Coast hip hop so well, especially Wu-Tang, man. Like I didn't really get into martial arts movies until I started dating Connie, and like I was flipping through her DVDs and like everything was martial arts, and like she loved it, you know what I mean? And like her family, that's kind of what they would sit around and watch.
Right.
And I remember the first time, I think it was House of the Flying Daggers that we sat down and watched, and like that one's a newer one, you know what I mean, but still just like blew my mind. And then from there I wanted to dig into them, you know what I mean? And like now that's still one of my favorites. I love Hero with Jet Li. I like even the newer ones, you know what I mean? And then I've got like the collections. Now you can go to Walmart and buy like 30 martial arts movies, black and white, for like $5, you know what I mean? It's crazy. But I like, those are good Saturday, like chill, put them in the background, you know what I mean, and kind of watch them or whatever. I love those for that kind of thing, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I have a very large Shaw Brothers collection. And the other night, I don't even remember how the subject came up, but I was hanging out with the boys and we were watching something and they were talking about like a fight scene or whatever, and I was like, this
ain't nothing
that great. I'm like, y'all need to see the Ong Bak movie.
Yeah. Ong Bak,
so I
man.
broke them out and I was like, all right, y'all need to watch these.
Oh, those are bad, dude. Like when he's doing the flips off the elephants and whatnot, man. Like, those movies are bad. I love those. What's your favorite director, man?
Favorite director? Whew.
Another tough one, I know.
Yeah. That is a tough one. You know, Spielberg is great, but I'll be honest, never been like a huge fan. Just because if you start looking at all of his work, he has moments of genius. Yeah. But then he has a lot of filler in there too.
Yeah, his name has sold for a long time.
Right. Man, I don't know that I could say there's one director that, Kubrick, I think, is, in some ways, everyone knows Kubrick.
Yeah.
But I think he slept on, because
Yeah.
I don't think people realize what he did with a camera and how great.
And like what you could do with a camera when he was doing that. A lot of people thought some of the things that he was doing were impossible. You know what I mean? And there's a reason that people say, like, if they faked the moon landing, that he was the dude that filmed it. You know what I mean? Like, there's a reason behind that, because he was able to achieve things. He was a perfectionist to such a level, like, he would run it back every single time, hundreds of times. Like, I've read about kind of the way that he would shoot things, and like he would drive people on set nuts. Like, you had to be a special type of person to work with him. You know what I mean? Because if it wasn't happening right, it was happening again. You know, and a level of perfection that you just don't see a lot anymore.
It's true.
Yeah.
I guess the other one I would name is Akira Kurosawa.
Okay.
So I'm a huge samurai movie buff, and he's the best.
Yeah.
He's the greatest. His samurai films are amazing and inspired Lucas to make the Star Wars films.
Oh yeah, man.
Inspired the Magnificent Seven and things, classics, movies that are classics in America. They don't even realize that it's taken from a classic.
Runs with a parallel of Japan, and like a lot of people have no idea about that history of Star Wars. But now if you look at it, you can see it. And that's one thing I do like about what Disney's doing is kind of they've brought that Japanese culture. I think it was Rogue One, and like watching that, and like the first time I saw like the samurai stormtrooper, I was like, okay, I'm sold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think it was at Comic-Con that I saw like the action figure. I think we were there actually kind of walking around, and I saw that thing. I'm like, that is the coldest toy I've ever seen, you know? Because there's just something about samurais, man, that is just dope, you know? I mean, just bottom line, there's something cool about it.
No question.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a whole, and you don't want to get too deep off into it, but there's a whole like code that person lives by, and not just like one that that's about being a warrior, but that's about being a gentleman, and and things like that as well.
And there's something that appeals to all men in that, because I think a lot of us, like, we're battling our own weaknesses on a day-to-day basis, and everyone wants to have kind of that type of moral code to a degree, like an upstandingness about them, but it's so hard to achieve. And like when you look at the epitome of like trained for that, did it day after day after day, you have to earn that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So when you see something like that, it's kind of the image of good, and hard work and dedication, like embodiment of those things, I think that's probably why it's so appealing.
It's definitely romanticized.
Yeah.
But if you appreciate the level of commitment that these men had to excellence, and being excellent with whatever it was they did, down to grooming, and things like that. There's something that I'm trying to teach Jake a lot lately, is that you have to create good habits. Yeah, and so. That level of discipline comes from creating good habits. You have to get into the habit of doing these things on a daily basis. Otherwise, what you'll do is create bad habits. Yep. By not doing these things. Yeah. And so your time you're triggered by, laziness. You're triggered by, whatever you smell, you're going to eat, whatever, like. If you can create habits that where you eat healthy, where you take care of yourself physically, where you are taking care of your mind by feeding it through reading and things like that. Then you got a firm foundation you can build on, for sure, man. So we're talking about Japanese culture a little bit. Let's kind of jump in, look at it from a different angle, man. We've talked about anime a little bit before. Yep. Do you have a favorite anime? Yeah, for sure. So. Okay. The Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Brotherhood is great. That series. You put me onto that. Yeah, that series is my favorite. There's several movies that I love. Of course, a lot of the high level ones like Akira and Ghost in the Shell, and things like that. But Sword Art Online, is another series.
Season 1 at least.
Season 1 was definitely like that was the one.
They could have ended it there.
Yeah, they could have.
Yeah.
You know, season 2 it kind of. But you know, I love all of the mecha stuff. So, you know, if it's got a giant flying robot,
like Gundam and whatnot, man,
then I'm into it.
Yeah, and that was huge in Japan for a long time, man. Like that was, I mean, throughout the 90s, that was most of kind of, there was at least one giant robot in a lot of it, you know what I mean? I've been kind of kicking off Crunchyroll a lot more often lately, kind of when I have time to myself. I'll watch it on my phone at lunch break and stuff. And I still haven't got to dive into Attack on Titan season 2. Have you seen season 2 yet?
I haven't seen season 2.
No, I haven't got to check it out yet, but I'm looking forward to it, man. Now that it's all kind of out there or whatever, I'm excited to jump into it. But I know that I'm going to end up binging it, so I've got to set aside a couple days to where I'm going to really be able to dive in. You know what I mean?
They're starting to make all these great anime series into one-off live action films.
Did you see the Scarlett Johansson, or is it?
I didn't. Actually, the kids did, but I didn't see it.
Oh man, Connie, you watched that with me, didn't you?
What was it?
The Ghost in the Shell with Scarlett, the live action. I watched it. I thought you may watched it with me, dude. Oh man, it was bad, man. Yeah, I did not like it at all. But maybe it's because the original was so classic.
Right.
Like, I feel like you didn't really need to remake that, and especially if you were going to remake it, don't make it into like some cheap, one-off kind of. And they invested a lot of money. I don't mean cheap in that sense. I mean cheap as in like, it just had no substance to it, Yeah. And there was definitely parts that kind of were reminiscent of Fifth Element or whatever, like the way they were shooting things and whatnot. But then at the same time, it was just like, man, I feel like you're just taking everything from all the action movies and kind of putting them together or whatever, I wasn't feeling it.
I just saw a trailer for Death Note.
Yep.
And
Netflix.
I was like, I don't know, man.
Tough. And they're doing the Full Metal Alchemist too. I don't know if you've seen that one too. Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, that'll be coming out soon too. And again, you were talking about, man, like they're just all these sequels and remakes.
It was
and
done right the first time.
Yeah.
You don't have to.
It's like there's no originality to things anymore. You're just kind of copying almost. And I don't know, man. I think that'll be another thing that we'll have a huge resurgence on. Like you're starting to see like these films that are coming out now, they're showing them in 30 millimeter, 75 millimeter, and people coming out and like watching the art of it. And I think film festivals are huge elsewhere. I wish that we would have could get a big one near here. You know what I mean?
Me too.
And I think that'll come eventually. Like a lot of the people that are coming up in Lexington, this city, Marcus and I were talking about, is rapidly changing. And I think it's definitely a breeding ground for that kind of thing. And I would love to see, like, with the taxes being so different here than they are in LA. Like, I know where I'm from, Georgia, a lot of people are going there to film films now because, like, they're giving them such huge tax breaks. Like, Walking Dead has kind of paved the road for that.
Yeah.
And I think that Kentucky's a great place to film at. You know what I mean? There's so much open land. You can go, you can drive 15 minutes and be in a totally different setting,
Yes.
And there's not a lot of places that are like that.
It's true.
So I hope one day we'll kind of have more films going down here and like more of a authentic film following, you know.
I hope so too.
It may come. Yet to be determined. Maybe you'll be writing those scripts. Let's hop into fatherhood, man. So you've been talking about Jake a little bit. How did your life change when you had Jake, man?
Man, I tell people this sometimes if you start talking about pride, and I tell them I cannot explain this, but because I didn't really have anything to do with it, I did not necessarily accomplish anything in this and this kid certainly had not accomplished anything
Right.
other than be born.
Yeah.
But where the moment in my life where I felt the most pride ever was the first time I held him.
Yeah.
Like, just swelled up, like, I felt like I accomplished, like a huge thing. And I don't know why, but that's the best way I could explain it. That was the most proud I ever felt. And I knew at that moment, like, that I would be proud of everything he accomplished.
Yeah.
That it would, it really is like sort of an extension of, not to project my own stuff on,
but it's who
him.
you are.
Yeah.
Like, again, not to bring Marcus's interview up again, but like kind of what he said was like, your wife is giving birth to you. Mm-hmm. Like, like there's a kid coming out of there, but it's an extension of who you are. It's your legacy, and there's something beautiful about that, man. Like, I'm 4 weeks away, and part of me is so nervous, and then the other part of me is just so excited about it, man, because I know that that's going to be the continuation of who I am. Mm-hmm. And like wrapping my head around that, because most of my friends don't have kids. Right. Most of my friends aren't even married, and like where I'm at is totally different, like total different ball game. So I try to talk to them about it. And that was a lot of the reason why I, started this podcast, is because I wanted to bring dads in to kind of bounce some of the things that I'm thinking off of and kind of get a better idea of kind of what it's going to look like, because I just don't have a lot of people in my life that I hang out with that are fathers, you know what I mean? So it's cool to just kind of have dads come in and kind of tell me a little bit of their story and whatnot, and to see, man, like, because all of my friends are like, dude, your life's over. And there's an aspect that, like, yeah, it'll never just be me again, but like it's like a level up almost, you know what I mean? And that part is really exciting for me.
Well, it's funny because we've also had friends that have had kids for the first time long after we did. We meaning me and my wife Danielle.
Right.
And I going through music, and sometimes it's people that we work with through music, and I can remember people being like, well, we're just not going to be able to work going forward because you're going to be tied up, and it's just, it's over basically. Like you said, like, oh, your life's over. And I'm always like, mine wasn't. Like when Jake was born, I didn't stop recording. I didn't stop touring.
Right.
Like I kept doing these things, and for one, you can't just give up on your dream, and you can't. Man. Also, if you quit everything you do to focus on raising your kid will grow up and think that that's the whole point of life. Like, is to then just raise a kid. Like, what is it you're doing? Yeah,
how can you teach that to chase a dream and to be everything that you want to be if there's not a capacity, a part of you that's doing that?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, you can't teach from non-experience.
No. And so for me, you get to a certain point where it changes, maybe your approach changes.
Right.
Like I at a certain point when I was more involved in coaching the sports that Jake's playing, and being present at all his events, then you back off from the touring,
right?
Because I want to be there for this.
That's the decision you make, though.
Yeah. It's a decision that I make, and maybe my attention drifts more from one thing to another,
right?
But I'm never gonna just be like, this is my whole deal. If that were the case, then he's 13, he's going into 8th grade. In 5 years, then
what? Yeah,
like, what am I gonna do then? Am I gonna, if he goes away to college, am I gonna move to the town he goes away to? Like, it can't be like that.
Nah, man. Your identity can't all be in your child.
Right.
You know, it becomes a part of who you are, man. You're a father forever.
Yes.
You know what I mean? But like, it doesn't necessarily wreck everything you've got going.
Right.
You know, and that's kind of what I wanted to show a lot of people, because I was hearing my friends say it over and over again, and I'm like, you know what, man? Like, I'm booked 4 months out, and everybody on the show is a dad. You know what I mean? And like, and they're coming in and they're talking about all these things they've got going, man, and kind of what they're doing and what they've achieved while being a father. So, you know, my life's not over, man.
No,
you know, I'm excited about
it's
the next
enhanced.
step. Yeah, man, leveled up.
Yep.
That's so, man, with that being said, I know that it's hectic. You know, you're talking about a lot of different stuff that you've got going on, man. So what do you do personally to stay like centered and grounded and not just getting pulled away by the sheer amount of things you've got going on?
Well, of course, faith plays a part in that, but I don't want to be I don't even want to say that, because to me that's sort of a given, and it's something that happens no matter what your situation
Yes.
is. I think for me it's the sense of responsibility, and I guess I've conditioned myself to always think of legacy when I do anything.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what keeps me grounded. And honestly, at a certain point, a lot of it too is like realizing that all of this is going to crumble and fall apart if you are not taking care of your heart.
Yeah, you're a pillar, man.
Yeah, so it's that sense that God instilled in me very young, you know, that sense of responsibility. And my parents always talk about how independent I was and how much in a hurry I was to sort of get out and do things on my own.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of what keeps me grounded and focused on, you know, taking care of business.
Right.
So, you know, I have a full-time job. For 3.5 years, up until a couple months ago, I was hosting the foundation.
Yeah.
Open mic here in Lexington, and we're taking a little break from that.
Yeah,
But
I was going to ask about that, because I know you were taking a break. I think it was back in March that you posted kind of like, we're taking a break. And at first I thought it was for the month. And then I realized, like, you know, maybe he needs a break, you know, and that happens.
Yeah. And I actually said I attended and helped put on an open mic with Divine Karama,
Community Expressions
earlier in the week. And he asked me, you know, he put me on the spot and was like, tell everyone why the foundation hasn't happened for a few months. And I said, to be honest, it started to fizzle.
Right.
And it's not worth my time and energy if no one else in the community wants to put in time and energy on it. You know, like if they want to come out, then I'm willing to facilitate it, you know, and put in that time and work and energy and to do it.
Right.
But if it's gonna be, you know, like a burden or something, then
why?
Yeah. So and it just needs a break, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that. But it'll be back. The foundation will be back.
Definitely.
And it'll be better and maybe a little bit different than it was before.
Because I was promoting it on the last podcast. We were talking about kind of some of the community things that go on here in Lexington, and that's something that's been, I mean, a big part of the scene. I mean, it really has. When I look back on kind of some of the open mics that have had really a presence in Lexington, like one of the ones that comes to mind is Poetry in Motion from Divine.
Yeah.
And for a long time, like, Divine has held down the community here as far as like being able to go out and have a venue and do that, you know what I mean? Like, he's really done that. And the other one that's a big one, it's because there's open mics, but a lot of the people that are holding them aren't a part of the community.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's definitely different when someone that's a part of the community is holding something for the community. There's a different ambiance to it, man. There's a different spirit around it. And like, hearing the history of kind of where the foundation came from and whatnot, I know that there's too much there for it to be gone forever. You know what I mean? So I knew that it's just going away for a little bit.
Yeah, it's on hiatus, right?
Yeah, it'll be back.
Yeah, so, you know, being involved in that, and then in the last year I'd coached middle school football, and that's takes several months of doing
right.
that, and that's every day.
Yeah.
You have practice Monday to Wednesday, game on Thursday, practice on Friday.
Yep.
And then Saturday and Sunday you might have coaches meetings and you're reviewing film.
And some of that stuff is on a drop of a dime. You get a text and you got to make it happen.
Yeah. So, all that's very involved. And then he goes straight from football into basketball. And then in basketball, one of the things I don't coach on the basketball team, but I figured, what's a way that I could contribute or help or make the experience better for the kids, and so I volunteered to DJ all the home games.
Dope.
So
that's got to be fun too, right?
It is fun, and I think the kids get a kick out of it because they don't have that where they go other places. Like somebody might be playing music off an iPod during halftime or something.
Not what you're doing though.
Yeah, not a live DJ mixing.
Yeah, definitely, man.
So,
that's dope. That makes me want to come to a game.
It's cool, man. Yeah, and we have and I do it like they do, at the higher levels. I DJ, they call a timeout. There's music playing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Until the ref blows the whistle to hand the ball back in.
That's dope, man.
So,
that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, man. This can be the last question before we go into rapid fire, and I'll hit you with a bunch of one or two. You know what I mean? You give me the quick answers. But our last main question, man, I want to ask you. I kind of end the show with this every time. Is what would your advice be to a new father? And I'm not saying me, because you ain't got to give me personal advice. I'm playing, but a new father in general. What would be advice from you, just man to man?
It's a long haul.
Yeah.
And it's important that both parents are in constant communication. I think that's a huge
communication
part of it is communicating through all that.
Yeah.
And then just being patient, because kids change over time, and so there may be it's funny because I think the first several years of Jake's life, they'd probably be people would see him with his mom or something, or with all of us.
Right.
But it would be he's a mama's boy,
Yeah.
He loves his mom, he wants to be around his mom,
right.
and hang out with that. And then he hits a certain age and it's he and I are inseparable.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it kids are growing and changing, and you go through different seasons, and I think it's just important that the parents communicate with each other as much as what they're communicating to the child.
It's nuts, man, because God's been preparing me for that for the last 2 years. When my wife got cancer last year, and just dealing with something that just comes out of the blue, you know what I mean? You're not expecting that to happen, especially at 25. You're thinking, man, I got a good 15, 20 years before I got to worry about something like that, and then when it hits you, man, he's already been preparing me. Life is seasons. That's my whole thing, man. One thing that I kind of base all of my existence around is the fact that it's all seasons, man. Just like the world is rotating in seasons, your life will rotate in seasons as well. You know what I mean? And I'm coming into a season where things are changing. And you were talking about responsibility earlier. That's been the overwhelming sense of everything is you're a man now. You know what I mean? You got to man up, and take this on head on. You know what I mean? So it's cool to know that I'm already being prepared for that. And I just know that it's just going to be a whole nother, ball game. Once it happens, it'll just hit me. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm grateful that I've got a good family around me that's kind of helping me and pushing me forward. And doing something like this, man, is something I've always wanted to do and had the capability to do, but doing it now, I know that it's going to help me stay grounded and whatnot. And having my wife's support and everything that I do, our communication and whatnot, man, I just hope to keep it that way. You know what I mean? Because a lot of people lose track of when the kid comes talking and communicating. And that's something that I'm really pushing for, that my wife and I, she can tell me anything, you know what I mean? And I want it to always be that way. That's my advice to everybody in relationships is yo, if you're not talking about everything, then you got to change that. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So good advice, good sound sound advice,
Well,
man.
congrats on
you,
doing
bro.
the podcast.
Yeah.
Man, you're doing it right. So
Thank you, man.
It's awesome, and thank you for involving me.
Definitely, man. You were supposed to be the first guest. You know that.
Yeah.
You know, I hit you up when this was still just kind of like an idea, man. So it's really cool to have you in, man. Like I'm just happy to chop it up with you again. It's been a while since we've even got to sit down and talk, man.
Yeah.
So it's cool to just have a conversation with you. And that's kind of what I love about the podcast is like it's a thing, but at the same time it's conversation.
Right.
It's basis of humanity, you know what I mean, man? So with that being said, man, let's go ahead and get to this rapid fire round.
do it.
Cool? All right, so tough questions ahead. So
I gotta be careful
yeah,
with this. I don't
you
know
gotta
what's
just
coming.
you gotta hit it with the, you know, first thing that comes to mind is some of them will be difficult, man, to like decide, but we're gonna go ahead and hit it.
Or
Okay?
should my answers be like one word answers?
I mean,
or-
I'm gonna give you both words, and you just pick one, pretty
Okay.
much. All right, and if you want to break it down a little bit, feel free, because there may be some that need some explanation.
Okay.
All right, cool. So, first question is music or movies? Ooh.
Man.
Yep.
I'm gonna say music
Okay.
because movies aren't good without music. So.
Right. Okay. Quentin Tarantino or Oliver Stone?
Wow. That's not even fair.
I know, man. I'm hitting
Like,
you with tough ones.
Yeah,
man.
that's not cool. Jeez. For writing, I can't even say that. That's not. Yeah, I don't. That's not fair. Like that's too good of a. Yeah. Man. Golly. You know, I think for the importance of what he's saying in his films, I'll say Oliver Stone.
Okay. Cool. Writing or typing?
Writing.
Yeah. Beer or wine?
Beer.
Method Man or Red Man?
Red Man.
Okay. Comics or manga?
Yes.
Tough.
Yeah. I'll say comics.
Clue or Battleship?
Battleship.
Yeah, we're going into the 80s, by the way. Skeletor or Shredder?
Skeletor.
Okay. Rambo or Rocky?
Rocky.
Reading Rainbow or Pee-wee's Playhouse?
Reading Rainbow. Especially the mashup with DMX and the Reading
Oh,
Rainbow.
yeah. Oh, that video is classic. I love that. Salves or Bourbon and Toulouse?
Savs.
Okay, final question. This is a tough one. No or Theory Has It? He's like, man, I'm gonna have to explain this one. If they were having a beat battle, man, and you had to lay $1,000 on one of them, right? Who you got?
I love No, and he's super dope producer and amazing. But I'm gonna put my money on my boy Theory Has It.
Yeah.
That's Has It is that's my brother, and he's super diverse with it. You know what
For
I mean?
sure.
Like he doesn't really have just like a signature sound. Like he can go places with it.
Right.
So.
Just, it's been a beautiful interview, man. Again, thank you for coming out, bro.
Thanks
I
for
look
having
forward
me,
to
Corey.
chopping it up with you again, man. And, thank you for supporting the podcast, man. You know what I mean? Like, it's been a big dream of mine, man. So to have you come through and just kind of talk about your life a little bit and share some advice with me, man, it's dope. Thank you for coming through, man.
Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Cool, brother. Well, this has been episode 2 of Dad is Dope. You can follow us at Dad is Dope on all platforms, including YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to my YouTube and check out the videos. Every episode will be coming out bi-weekly on Sundays. So it's pretty easy to keep up with. With that being said, the next interview that we've got coming through is going to be Dan Wu of MasterChef fame. He's going to be talking about how he's opening up a new restaurant called Atomic Ramen there off of Nicholasville Road. And my boy Bryce did all the art for him. So, if you want to keep up with Bryce, he did all my logo art and all that. You can check out his art also on Facebook. So with no further ado, we're going to go ahead and end this podcast out. Again, thank you, Justin. And you guys take it easy, man. Peace.
Peace.